the programs that the board is doing. If you remember last fall, the board agreed to contract with Susan Manning to do the classification and compensation study. Susan's worked with y'all for a number of years, and she is here to present the report. And assuming things go well, we will ask that you approve the report, approve the recommendations, authorize the implementation at your next meeting. Without further ado, is Susan, and once we have finished this, we can adjourn, and we will have some snacks and coffee in the break room if you would like.
Thank you, Mike. Oh, let's pull the microphone out. Okay,
Moving low enough for you?
you might, do I need to? Okay. All right, okay, thank you. Well, thank you all for having me back. I started working first time with Indian Trail back in 2015, and so I have remember a couple of you gentlemen, and I'm very happy to see the rest of you and have an opportunity to meet you all tonight. I'm sorry the pandemic prevents us from being able to shake hands and be a little closer, but I'll do my best to make the presentation tonight in a timely fashion so that Commissioner McIntyre can get home to his birthday celebration.
You all right, Susan?
And,
You all right?
and answer any questions that you might have. But it's a pleasure to be asked to come back. I did the classification and compensation study for the town in 2015, and at that time, I think that was the first time we had done a study in 9 or 10 years. So there was a lot of work to do. This time, we're building on the foundation of that first study, and I'm happy to say that it didn't take quite as much work this time as it did 5 years ago. So the purpose of the study, as you all probably had some conversation about this in the fall, was to do a classification and compensation study to ensure first that your job descriptions and your organizational structure was updated and that jobs were appropriately classified to maintain internal equity within the organization, and that your salaries and your salary ranges were competitive with the external labor market. And that's so that you can meet both your current and your future business needs to hire and retain well-qualified and high-performing employees. And the fact that you have to meet this goal in a very competitive labor market like the city, like the Charlotte region, means that it's really important to keep your salaries and your jobs competitive with that outside labor market. And the other purpose for the study was to review and update the town's personnel policy, which will actually be presented to you all in January. So it's a kind of a phase 1 and phase 2 study. I had done some work on the town's personnel policy 5 years ago, but apparently, and it had also been worked on by subsequent HR managers and directors, but it was never actually brought to you all for review and approval. And so we want to get that taken care of this time. So we'll be bringing that back to you in January. So our goals for the study, again, we started with the classification part of the study, which is to look at job descriptions, organization charts, and other HR documentation to make sure that they reflect current duties and responsibilities, reporting relationships, and organizational structure. We wanted also to look at the town's salary ranges to ensure that they were competitive in the Charlotte regional market in which you compete for talent to facilitate recruitment and retention of employees. We wanted to also look at how you were paying your employees within those salary ranges to make sure that we were paying people competitively with the market and commensurate with their qualifications. Again, with the idea being to improve retention of those employees and reduce turnover. And finally, we wanted to update the town's classification and pay plan to ensure equity and market competitiveness within your compensation strategies. And even though we did a study 5 years ago, and the board or the council has continued to budget for and approve employee salary increases, your classification and pay plan document has not been updated in 5 years. So that's a long time to go, and that was another reason for one of the goals of the study and the reasons that we did the study. So why do the study? You are sitting in the midst of a very competitive and dynamic labor market. Before the pandemic, unemployment was down to 3.5% in the Charlotte region, which is well below full employment, meaning that it was very difficult to hire and retain well-qualified employees. Even with the pandemic this year, we've still seen wages year over year increasing at an average of 3 to 3.5% in the Charlotte region. And since the last pay study was completed in 2015, you can see with the market moving that fast every year that it's very easy to get behind. So not only is it difficult to hire and retain well-qualified employees, if you start losing employees, the cost of turnover is very expensive when it comes time to replace your staff. We also needed to recognize the organizational changes that have taken place within the towns since 2015, and there were a number of those, and we'll talk more about those as we go along. And we needed to assess the town's pay plan and compare it to other local government employers in the area with whom you compete for talent. So those were the reasons that I think the council agreed that it would be a good time to do this study. These are the key dates. We started in August. At the time, Ray Allen was the interim town manager. I met with Ray and with Carrie to kind of do an initial project meeting to find out what the goals of the study were, what council's objectives were in having the study done. And we had a good initial project meeting to discuss those things. And then I actually started the classification portion of the study in August by reviewing organization charts, salary reports from the payroll system, and beginning to look at job descriptions of all employees. In the middle of August, August 17th, I met with all department directors, and this was to give them an opportunity to hear about the study on the front end, to ask their questions, to give me feedback on issues and concerns that they were having around classification and pay issues. And we had a meeting on the 17th. And on the 19th, we actually distributed a salary survey to 15 local government jurisdictions in the Charlotte region to gather data from the external market about how jobs were being paid in the Charlotte regional market for local government employees. The month of September, all the survey data started coming in. I compiled and analyzed that data, and then I had an initial project meeting with Mike, who had come on board at that before that time, and Carrie again to share some initial results. We finished the analysis and looked at the employee salaries and costing analysis in the month of October. And last week I shared the recommendations and the findings with the department directors, and tonight I'm here to share those recommendations with you all. I'm going to have time at the end for questions, but feel free as I go along, if you have questions, feel free to stop and interrupt me, and we'll try to answer your questions as we go. So the classification findings and recommendations, again, there were quite a few job descriptions that needed to be updated because there had been organizational changes over the course of the 5 years. There had been some reassignment of duties, changes in reporting relationships, and so forth. And so that was the first step in the classification part of the study, was to get those job descriptions updated to reflect the work that was actually being done and how the town was organized. For example, one of the big changes since I was here 5 years ago was engineering and public works were all in the same department. So they've now been separated, and so, as you might imagine, there were some changes in how jobs were organized and how duties were assigned. So we needed to reflect that separation from that singular department into two separate departments. Also, there were some changes right at the end of the study, the first study. Parks maintenance, which used to be under the Parks Department, was moved under engineering and public works, and so again, some of those job descriptions needed to be revised to reflect those changes. Recently, or fairly recently, within the last couple of years, your Park and Recreation Director position was changed, reclassified to a Parks and Recreation Manager position, and one of the results of the study was to move that position back to a director level because that position is functioning as the director of your Department of Parks and Recreation. We reclassified, our recommendation was to reclassify your Communications Coordinator position, which at the time of the last study did not report to the town manager and was not really a strategic position. It had a lot of communication duties, but they were at more at a department level as opposed to a town-wide level. And so we're recommending, after reviewing the communications job description, that it be moved to a director level. Finally, we wanted to confirm the job classifications in all the departments. There have been a number of small changes, not a lot of major changes in engineering and finance and planning and public works and parks and recreation. But again, it was mainly updating jobs and a few title changes needed to be made, but not significant changes. I am recommending that we delete one job classification. You had a job class for customer service representative. This actually goes back to when you were in the old building, and some of you that remember that, we had two people that sat right up front as you came in the front of the building, and they actually were part of the planning department, but their classifications were customer service representatives, and they did a combination of planning duties and front desk receptionist duties. But those jobs now have changed, and we have really reorganized and put those positions in different places. And so we don't need that job title anymore, that job class anymore. And we've really combined it with an administrative assistant job classification, which was an existing classification. And finally, we wanted to add a new job classification for the executive assistant role, which has been a new role that's been added over the last 5 years, but we didn't have a job title for that or a job classification for that position, and so we've now updated and have a new job description and are recommending that you add a new job classification for the executive assistant. So before I move on into compensation, any questions about the classification portion of the study? I've kept this at a fairly high level, but if you have more specific questions, I'm happy to address those at this time. If not, we'll keep on rolling. So the next part of the study was the compensation survey, the compensation study. Classification study really looks internally in the organization and looks at how jobs are classified in relationship to each other within the town. But when you do a compensation survey, you're looking externally to the town. So we developed a survey to send out to 15 benchmark communities in the Charlotte region that would give us a good cross-section of public sector organizations in the region. Of those 15, 14 responded, so that was a 93% response rate, which is excellent. And we included virtually all of the job classes that were currently being used in the town, 30 of them, to benchmark with these other public sector organizations. And we also included supplemental data from the League of Municipalities annual salary survey. And the League really does this annual salary survey every year of municipalities across all of North Carolina. And sometimes when we don't get enough local data that we need to supplement, we use data from the League for that purpose. So we were able to cross-check our data that we got from our custom survey with the data that we reviewed from the League of Municipalities. So these are the communities that we surveyed. Again, this represents the broader Charlotte regional labor market. We had representation from multiple counties in the region, and you see that list before you. You'll notice that we I think have most all of the small to medium-sized towns in Union County, and we did include Union County itself because that's the county in which you sit. And so it's good to know, even though counties are structured a little differently from municipalities, there are quite a few job classes that are similar, and we wanted to compare and see how competitive we were within Union County. And you all have some existing intergovernmental relationships within Union County, I know, for your law enforcement services and other types of things. So that's the reason we included Union County. We did include all 6 of the small towns in Mecklenburg County. We did not include Charlotte because Charlotte is, while they're a big player in the region, their size and structure makes it very difficult to really compare apples to apples when you're looking at their positions. So we opted not to include Charlotte. We did include a couple of towns in Cabarrus County, Harrisburg, which is fairly close in size to you all, in Kannapolis, which also is about your size in terms of population, although not in terms of size of government. And then Belmont in Gaston County and Mooresville in Iredell County. So a good cross-section of the region to look at how governments of different sizes but offering very similar services to you all are compensating their employees.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So the basis for your inclusion of these different communities, you looked at the size of the town or the municipality. But did you take into account, or did you factor in what the tax rate is, or the makeup or the services provided? Were these things that were included in your in some of the towns that you visited, or you got the survey from? And the reason I'm asking that question, right? There's no 2 towns are going to be alike. They're going to have some similarities, but they're going to be dissimilar, if I can say that. But I'm asking that question from that standpoint. Also, the cost of living or the tax rate in Mecklenburg or Iredell or Gaston would probably be different than Union. It's not always the same. So these are other factors. And I'm just asking that in terms of trying to understand the benchmarks used for sort of getting that competitive salary view for us.
Yes, that's a very good question. So we do look at population, and you will see, I think you all are about 40,000 population.
Yeah.
Some of these jurisdictions are smaller in population than you all are. So you look at Davidson in Mecklenburg County, they have about 13,000 in population. And some of them are larger than you all are. So the idea is to get a cross-section within the region of those entities that you are competing with for talent. We don't typically look at the tax rate, although I do look at the size of the budgets when we're looking at this, because again, if you just look at, and we also look at the number of employees that each of these entities have. The other thing we look at is, do they offer comparable services to us? Because again, if they're not offering similar services, we're not really comparing apples to apples. So, so we do look at how the governments are organized, how they're structured, what's the population of the community that they serve, what services are they providing, and what's the size of the budget and the number of employees that each of them have. And we know there's a spectrum out there, so we try to get good representation across that spectrum because we're really looking at a regional labor market. That's what you're competing in. Even though you may have, you know, a smaller or larger population or a different tax rate, you still have to compete in that market. Does that help?
Yeah, we can keep going.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything?
I was just wondering with the pandemic and a lot of places having lack of revenues, hiring freezes, I was wondering how that's impacted your survey. Well, I mean, maybe this wasn't a good year to do this, you know, so as far as, you know, do we feel like this is accurate compared to a normal year?
Mm-hmm.
So what I was wondering is how much you think that has impacted this survey, considering, I mean, even Union County with lack of revenues, I got a feeling a lot of people's, you know, had hiring freezes and, you know, lack of revenues and probably hadn't given raises or promotions like they would in a normal year. So I was wondering how much you think that's impacted the survey, or maybe we're doing this at the wrong time.
I don't think it impacted the survey data this year, because so if you think about the pandemic really hit us in March, which was at the very end of the fiscal year, of the previous fiscal year. And so we really didn't know, when you all were doing your budgets back in May and June, we didn't really know what the impact of the pandemic was going to be and how long it was going to last. And to a certain extent, we still don't know that. But, you know, most of the jurisdictions that were working on budgets last May and June were looking at the impact was on the sales tax end of things. And so I know there's, you know, a number of jurisdictions have had to make adjustments to their budget, if you will, because revenues were not coming in at the level that they had anticipated. But at least as far as employees are concerned, and at least as far as budgets were concerned for the current fiscal year, which is the year that we're doing the survey in, it has not really affected that. So most jurisdictions were still giving raises this year. Most people were giving either some combination of cost of living or merit. Quite a few people were adjusting their salary ranges this year. I think probably we'll have more of an indication of the impact of the impact of the pandemic when people start working on budgets for next year. So it was just too early this year to really assess that. I will tell you that I look at quarterly data, which comes from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, U.S. Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics. They do quarterly surveys, quarterly updates to their data based on cost of living, based on the Employment Cost Index, which looks at how much wages and salaries and benefits are moving in any given year. And at least so far, Charlotte was pretty much maintaining that same average of 3%, which is what we've seen over the last 5 years. It might be a little slower in the third quarter, which is what we're getting ready to get data from, but at least through the first 3 quarters, fourth quarter is what we're waiting on, but through the first three quarters, wages and salaries in the Charlotte area have held their own. So it's still a competitive issue for you. The other reason I would say it was a good time to do your study is you hadn't done one in 5 years. And we usually recommend that you do a study every 2 to 3 years, because every year that you put off doing the study, you're falling behind the market. So to a certain extent, it's good that you're doing the study now, because even if the market takes a pause next year, you will be competitive with the market, and you probably won't have to to make any kind of major changes for the next year or two, so.
Yeah, as far as the market, what I was wondering in a competitive nature was, is we have the private sector and then we have the government. So in being competitive, I know you was talking about a 3% Charlotte region. I was wondering, well, if that's the private sector, to me, that really doesn't kind of equate to government. To me, it's kind of different. So I was kind of interested in, with the pandemic, of how it's affected government employees, because we're hiring people for government. So from a competitive standpoint, that's where I would be looking at more so, is
Well,
just kind of give you an idea.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a good point. The data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics includes both public and private. So we can look at the wage growth among public employers as well as private employers, and then the combined. So, again, local government market, public, state and local government market has continued to also move similarly to the private sector market. So the question will be whether it continues to do so, or whether there's going to be an impact, going into next year. But those are really good questions, and again, I think it was a good time to do the study because it gives you an opportunity really to catch up over the 4 or 5 years since we did the last study.
Thank you.
Ready to move on? Was that on point to your question? Thank you. So the market methodology, I wanted just to spend just a minute to talk about this. So how do we go about assessing what the market is? And so that's the point that Commissioner Barber was making about the public sector. So we didn't survey private sector. We are only surveying the public sector. One of the reasons we do that is the marketplace in which you are trying to compete against for public sector talent. There are certain jobs, of course, that are in both public and private sector. But it's also very difficult to get private sector data. Private sector organizations don't typically share their data. So it's much more difficult if you're trying to survey for the private sector to get that data. So we tend to focus on the public sector. That's the business we're in. And we're looking at other jobs in the public sector when we're trying to fill jobs in the town of Indian Trail. So what I'm sharing with you tonight doesn't reflect private sector, it's public sector, because that's what we surveyed. So when we send out these surveys to other local government jurisdictions, we're asking them to provide us several different pieces of information, data. We want to know for each of the job classifications in the survey, and there were 30 of them, ranging from everything to administrative assistant positions in admin type roles to director level to your labor trades and maintenance positions. So it's all of the job classes that the town of Indian Trail uses currently. So we ask each of those survey respondents to, if they can match to a job that's similar to our job, and we provide them a brief summary of what that job does so they can make a good match. And we ask them to provide the average or the actual salaries being paid for that job classification for each job classification in the survey. We ask them the number of employees they have in each of those job classifications and what is the salary range for that particular job classification. So at this point, we're looking at positions, and we're looking at not necessarily individual employees, although we do ask them to give us employee data of what they're actually paying for those jobs. And for example, if you have a job like a planner position where you may have multiple incumbents in that job, we ask them to average the actual salaries that they're paying for their planning positions. Other jobs like director level positions, there's just one incumbent, and so we just get the actual salaries and the salary ranges for each of these. So that's the data that we request from each of these jurisdictions. And then we use that data to calculate a market rate for each job class. And the way we do that is we take the actual salaries being paid in the market for that job class, and we average that. Then we sometimes do an adjusted market rate because we want to exclude outliers that might be unduly skewing data one way or the other. And let me give you an example. So obviously Union County is a much larger governmental entity than any of the towns in Union County. So their finance director position, perhaps, would have a size and scope far beyond what a finance director in a small town would be. And so that might be an example where we would exclude that position from that average process. So if it's a job is unusually high, because maybe it's a much larger jurisdiction, we might exclude it from the calculation. It also can be true if a job is unusually low, because it may be a much smaller jurisdiction from you all, that it would be appropriate to exclude it. So if we have to exclude any data for that reason, we do an adjusted market rate. So there's the market rate, there's an adjusted market rate. And then there's one other data point that we look at, and that is what is the median? What is the median salary being paid in the market for that particular position? And that's simply what is the 50th percentile. So whatever that median salary being paid in the market is, 50% of the sample pays higher than that, and 50% pays lower than that. So that gives us several different data points that we can then use to determine if your salary ranges are competitive with the market, or if your salaries being paid to particular employees are competitive with the market. And when we look at that and make that comparison, we're comparing that market rate to the midpoint of your current salary range. So that's kind of the methodology that we use, and when we are then doing our analysis of your pay plan, we want your midpoint of your salary range to fall somewhere within what we call the market range, which is plus or minus 5% of the market rate. So I know this is a lot of techno speak, HR-wise, so I apologize for that, but I wanted to give you an idea of what kind of data we collect, and then what do we do with that data? How do we calculate that to come up with a market rate to compare your salary ranges to see if they're competitive within the market? So, I should say this, should have said this at the beginning. This is not the Susan Manning methodology. This is sort of best practice in HR circles for how you conduct a market study. It's done by private sector HR professionals as well as HR professionals in the public sector, and it's a very similar methodology that I used 5 years ago when I did the study, because it's kind of the best practice. So, questions about that before we go on and look at your data?
Sitting here thinking about public versus private, and you don't get anything from the private.
We typically do not, unless
But you've got personnel, you got finance, you got maintenance. If I was working on one entity, I'm gonna be looking at anybody's gonna pay more.
right, and that is one of the limitations. And sometimes what we look at, it's not impossible to get private sector data. It's just difficult to get private sector data because they don't have to share it. In the public sector in North Carolina, salaries are public record, and you have to share it with each other. And so you can always get public sector data, but private sector data, we usually have to rely on private surveys that are done by major consulting firms. They're typically very expensive to gain that data. But it is certainly what the private sector uses when they need to go out and survey the private sector. We do have a source of private sector data in the Charlotte region that we sometimes use. If it looks like we have a problem area, for example, let me tell you who the organization is called the Employers Association. And they are an HR consulting organization in the Charlotte area, been here for many, many years. And they do an annual survey of the private sector for the Charlotte region. And we can sometimes get some of their data that they are sometimes willing to share it, particularly if your government is a member of that organization. I do not think you all are, but some governments in the Charlotte region are members of the Employers Association. And oh, you are a member. And so you can actually get access to their survey data. And we use that sometimes if you are having recruitment and retention problems and are losing people to the private sector. So, for example, public works jobs are a good example of that. Back over the last 3 or 4 years, really, with the construction boom in the Charlotte region, we've had public sector organizations have had a very difficult time keeping their maintenance positions because they could go out and go to work for a construction company and make more, per hour. And so that has been part of our turnover problems. So sometimes we have to look at private sector data if it looks like we're having turnover issues in job classes that are used in both the public and the private area. So we have not done that this time because it did not look like we were having a huge problem in any particular area with turnover. But if the commission feels like, the council feels like that's an important thing, we could go back and try to get some additional data. I think you would find it's going to be very similar to what our survey data will show us as well. But good question. Any other?
What's the turnover rate? Okay. That's good news.
All right, we'll move on. Good questions. Did you have a question, sir?
Nothing you want to answer. No, I was just wondering what your statistical percentage range was for your coming up with your medium methodology data.
I'm sorry,
Anyway, it's a math question. Never mind. Go ahead.
the median is at the 50th percentile.
I know what a median is.
Yeah. The average is, of course, the average of the data, so,
Just in statistics, you can adjust the median, so it's a math question, but
Yeah.
that's fine. Go ahead.
not one that we typically employ then, if it's
Yeah.
beyond the methodology I just outlined. We do.
Like I said, I didn't have a question, so go ahead.
Yeah, well, we do, a little bit of that is what, when we look at that market range, we really look at, and that's where that's kind of the sweet spot where you want your midpoint of the range to hit. And that's a plus or minus 5% around that average. So I don't know if that's really what you have in mind, but we don't look at just a single point, we look at the range. Okay, Mr. Mayor.
It's now 10 after 6.
Pardon?
It is now 10 after 6.
Okay.
I don't know how much of your presentation is left.
Okay, we'll move it along. So the survey results are on the screen. As I said, 30 job classes were surveyed. 24 of the 30 job classes, the salary ranges, now we're talking about the ranges, were below market. So about 80% of the town's job classes had salary ranges that were below market. And 6 of the 30 job classes were competitive with the market. So that's about an 80-20 split, and no job classes were above the market. This is not surprising because it had been 5 years since you had done your last survey. And while you have approved salary increases for employees, and employee salaries have been increased, you didn't increase your salary ranges at all over that 5-year period. And so that's why you're behind in so many of your job classes. So this is really kind of what we expected to see. This was not a surprise. But it does show that in order to be competitive, and we need to move these salary ranges up so that you can both recruit and retain employees. And this is why, even though we're in a pandemic, it was not a bad time to do the survey, because you would just be falling further behind if we didn't make some adjustments to your ranges. So those were the results. These are the job classes whose salary ranges were below market. Most of your director positions, most of your engineering program managers, these are your professional engineers, your recreation and athletic program coordinators in park and recreation, your senior planner, your tax collector, your town clerk, most of your admin support positions like your administrative assistants and your technician level positions, and then all of your labor trades and technician positions like maintenance techs, your code enforcement officers, and so forth. The job classes that were at market or competitive with the market, again, this is looking at the midpoint of your range compared to that market rate that we calculated for each job class. The ones that were competitive with the market were your planning director, your public works director, your planner, your senior accountant, the engineering intern, and your executive assistant, which was a new class and salary range that we developed as one of the recommendations from the classification study. So once we looked at the structure and we realized that we had that many ranges that were below market, we wanted to also look at how you were paying employees within those ranges. So every job class has a range, minimum, midpoint, and maximum in your pay plan structure. And then you are paying employees somewhere within that range based on their qualifications and years of experience. So we wanted to compare the current salary of the employee to the midpoint of the proposed new salary range, and we wanted to review the employee qualifications to see if they were being paid competitively within that proposed new range. So if an employee's salary is at the midpoint or above, it's deemed to be competitive with the market. So if you're paying that employee competitively within the range, they're being paid at the midpoint or above, we did not recommend any salary increase for the employee. If the employee's salary is below the minimum of the new range, then we wanted to move the employee to the minimum of the range as long as the employee meets the minimum qualifications for that position. And if employee qualifications are above the minimum of the range, meaning they're well qualified for their job, and their salary is below that midpoint, then they're not being paid competitively with the market, and employees at that point may be eligible for a market adjustment to move their salary closer to the midpoint. So that's simply how we apply that methodology as we start to move the employees into the new pay plan structure. And these were the compensation findings overall. Again, as I said, 80% of all the town's salary ranges were below market. The salary ranges of 26 of the 30 job classes needed to be adjusted by some amount in order to make them more competitive. If you remember a couple of slides ago, it said that 24 job classes were below market, but yet I'm recommending that we adjust 26 ranges. And that goes back to this issue of looking at both internal equity and external pay, because if you start adjusting salary ranges based on external data, you have to make sure you're not creating an internal equity problem within the organization. And we did find that there were a couple of jobs that if we adjusted salary ranges in one area, then we needed to also adjust a couple more ranges because of internal equity. So 26 of 30 job classes needed to be adjusted. Most of the salary range adjustments are about 10 to 15%. That's the amount that they were below the market, but some were as much as 20 to 35% below market. Not very many, fortunately, but a few. The good news out of all this was that most employees of the town are being paid competitively with the market based on their qualifications and their proposed salary ranges. And the reason for that is the council has had the wisdom over these 5 years to invest in their employees by awarding cost of living and merit increases, so that even though your pay plan structure wasn't being adjusted, that's why you're behind in the structure of the pay plan, your employees are actually being paid fairly competitively based on their qualifications and the market data. So that was a piece of good news. So looking at the new structure, the proposed structure, adjusting those ranges that need to be adjusted to be more competitive with the market, and then looking at the employees and which employees should be eligible for salary increases based on applying that methodology that I covered earlier. 14 employees are recommended for salary increases. So this is a little less than half of your employees we are recommending for salary increases. 23 employees are not recommended for a salary increase, and I wanted to share why. And 20 of those employees are already being paid at the midpoint or above. In many cases, it's because they're employees with long-time service to the town, and therefore they're being paid in that range because they've been here, and they're also, in many cases, some of your best performers. So there's nothing wrong with paying an employee above the midpoint if they're highly qualified and are top performers. So we're recognizing that we've made an investment in those employees, and they are being paid competitively at the midpoint or above, commensurate with their qualifications. 2 employees who were newer employees are being paid appropriately, also based on their qualifications, because if they're a brand new employee or haven't been here very long, they may be paid on the lower end of the range, and that could be absolutely appropriate because of their qualifications. So we had 2 employees that fell into that category, and then 1 employee is a new hire, still in their probationary period, and again, they are being paid appropriately based on their qualifications and their service. And then we have 2 positions that are currently vacant. Yes, sir.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up in the next 5 minutes.
Okay. And I'm getting ready to. 2 more slides. So if you accept the recommendations of the study with making the adjustments to the salary ranges and approve these salary increases for the 14 employees that would be eligible based on the methodology, the annual salary increase cost would be $30,500. We also have to calculate the associated benefit costs because you do a 3% contribution to the 401k plan, and you have a contribution to the local government employees retirement system, and so that's the additional benefit cost associated with those increases. So the total annual implementation cost for full implementation of the study is just over $34,000. If we are recommending a January 1 implementation so that we would implement mid-year, and so the fiscal year implementation cost is just over $17,000 a year. So these are the next steps. Approved recommendations would be at your next meeting, December the 8th. We will be presenting that day to you a new classification and pay plan. Again, the structure, which is something the board needs to approve and really should revisit every year during the budget cycle so that you're keeping that plan current rather than going 5 years between adjustments. Implement salary increases and the new ranges January the 1st. We will plan to present a recommended revised personnel policy to you at the workshop on January 12th and the personnel policy approval on January 26th. And finally, I would recommend that you do a pay plan and classification review every 2 to 3 years, as long as we're in a market that is continuing to move, so that, again, you don't get behind with the structure of your classification and pay plan. And Mr. Mayor, I'm done.
Okay. First, before they go, be able to send each of the council members a copy of this presentation.
I think
Yeah, I
Mike-
think
have
it
it
was,
already.
I think it was sent out yesterday.
Okay.
Yes.
I did not, for some reason, I didn't get an attachment with that.
Okay, did everybody, did
I
y'all,
got it.
Yeah, I got it.
you did? Okay, we'll
And
send it.
two, I'd ask if the council had questions when they look at the presentation, just to send them through Mike to Susan to answer. If there's that many questions, maybe you can come back. But if there's just a few questions, just go through Mike to answer them.
Absolutely, and I'm planning to be here on December 8th, which is the night that we would have it on your agenda for approval. But of course, if there are questions before then, if you'll get them to Mike, we won't wait till December the 8th to answer your questions. We'll get responses right back to you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I know time is nigh, but just one quick question to Susan. Is the term classification and ranges and all that can get very confusing very quickly, but what I think I'm hearing you say is that the majority of our employees are being paid appropriately, but what has happened is the range, which would be the minimum for a position, the maximum for a position, is behind, and we have to slide that range
Correct.
so that we don't have employees that actually go outside the range because the range is artificially low. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct.
Okay.
And so, and just a real quick sort of history note on that, because you haven't adjusted your pay ranges in 5 years, you've had to hire a lot of your employees, your new employees, up in the range, or your existing employees have continued to move up in the range, and many of them are almost at the top. So they don't have any room to grow. So even those 23 employees that are not going to get an increase as a result of the study, the benefit to them is we're going to make the range more competitive, and that gives them room to grow within their range. So that is a really important thing, and thank you for the clarification, Mike.
And it's also important for recruiting purposes to have the ranges that are competitive with the other municipalities.
Right.
And ours are 5 years behind. So.
And one of the things I think when we advertise positions, we advertise the range, and sometimes if the range is too low, employees may not even apply because it's not worth they can make more money starting out elsewhere, your point.
One other thing that the manager asked me to mention at the end, and again, this is just an issue for future discussion, is one of the other unique things about Indian Trail is that you don't participate in the Social Security system. And that is a decision, it is not a council decision, it's not even a manager decision. That is a decision that because many years ago, the town opted out of the Social Security system, the only way that you can opt back in is by vote of the employees. And employees in Indian Trail have voted twice over a period of years, most recently about 3 years ago, Karen? 2016, so 4 years ago. And in both cases, they voted it down not to participate. But this is also something that can create issues for you, and I think Carrie has seen this with people leaving the organization, and sometimes people leave because they feel like, I'm getting older, I want to contribute to the Social Security system, so because you have to pay in order to get benefits. So again, I think that's something that the manager is going to be doing some further research on and maybe bringing back to you later during the budget process.
When we get to the budget process, we want to kind of talk about the ramifications of that. We certainly can't make the employees vote one way or the other, but just kind of look at some options that the board may want to consider as we talk along that line. That's all I've got on this, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the time.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead and take a 3 to 4 minute break. Trail Town Council for Wednesday, November 18th, 2020, to order. If we'd all stand for the pledge. A moment of silence. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, Remain standing for a moment of silence. Everyone may be seated. Real quick, before we start the meeting, we have a birthday here, and all the council has some cupcakes to pass over to you, since we know you can't have sugar. And Mayor Pro Tem McIntyre?
I take cash, by the way.
Well, that's good. So everybody's going to pass their cupcakes so that you have a nice sugar-free diet.
Is the town manager supposed to sing happy birthday?
I think he would prefer that none of us sang happy birthday. That would be his birthday wish.
Yeah, let's just wrap it up
You
and
know.
roll.
So, happy birthday, Marcus. We'll get you home as soon as possible.
Thank you very much,
Happy
sir.
birthday, Marcus.
Thank you, thank you. No place I'd rather be.
That's why. If you would, mark November 18th off for future meetings, so we're not here on his birthday.
So noted.
It'll be an Indian Trail holiday just for him. At this time, there are two deletions from the agenda. If a council member would be so kind as to make the motion.
So I'll make a motion that we delete item 6B, introduction of new deputies, and 7E, approval of the IT design contract. Those are all under the consent agenda.
Okay, if the council by show of hands, all in favor? Okay, all items deleted. If there's no other removals or additions, I need a motion to approve the amended agenda.
So moved.
Mr. McIntyre's made the motion. All in favor? Let the record show that was passed unanimously. We have a few presentations. First is the 10-year anniversary of the ABC store. Don't worry, Mr. McIntyre, I won't ask you for a hand for this. It's your birthday. Town of Indian Trail Proclamation, Indian Trail ABC Store 10-year celebration. Whereas on May 26, 2009, the Town of Indian Trail passed a resolution to allow a referendum for the purpose of establishing ABC stores and following for mixed beverage sales within the Town of Indian Trail. Whereas on November 2009, the referendum passed and the council proceeded with plans to open its first ABC store. Whereas on January 12, 2010, a request was made to council to add the ABC store use into the UDO and discussed goals for the establishment of the town's first ABC board. Whereas on February 16, 2010, the Town of Indian Trail officially announced the establishment of an alcohol beverage control board and requested application from those who have an interest in public affairs, have good judgment, knowledge, ability, and a good moral character. Whereas on February 25, 2010, the Town of Indian Trail issued a press release announcing that the Indian Trail Town Council had appointed 3 persons, Kenneth Porter as chairman, Wesley Henson, and Jan Brown, to the newly established Indian Trail Alcoholic Beverage Control Board. Whereas on November 22, 2017, the Indian Trail Town Council announced the adoption of the Brunch Bill ordinance allowing for the sale of malt beverages, unfortified wine, fortified wine, and mixed beverages as early as 10 a.m. on Sunday within the Indian Trail town limits. Whereas the current board, David Cohn serving as chairman, Jim White, Judy Sieberquit, Jennifer Ruberg, and David Lucarelli, are proud to announce the ABC Store's 10th year of operation. Whereas the Town Council of the Town of Indian Trail comes together with the citizens of Indian Trail and the ABC Board to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of the opening of the Indian Trail ABC Store. And whereas I, Michael L. Alvarez, Mayor of the Town of Indian Trail, do recognize and celebrate the successful operation of the Indian Trail ABC Store, which provides additional revenues for the town services. As such, I ask the citizens of Indian Trail to join the town in celebrating 10 years of profitable operations this month as the store formally celebrated their successes the week of November 9th through 14th. Where witnessed my hand, the official seal of the Town of Indian Trail on this 18th day of November, 2020. I'm assuming Jeff's here to receive this? Sure. Come on. since, let's see you dressed for the occasion.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'll give you a
Thank
fist
you.
bump.
Stay right there. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm going to, what do you, oh, you have it? Okay,
I got it.
okay,
I've got the next proclamation, but before I read it, I'd like for you to explain a little bit what we've done for the gentleman we're getting ready to bring, do this proclamation for, is Jim White, as far as the barrel and the bottles and everything, but you're the expert on that, so.
Well, I always tell customers I got more of a problem with ice cream than I do liquor, because, they ask questions and stuff like that, and we don't claim to be the experts, but we learn from the townspeople and everything else. So what we've done is, there's a thing called allocated bourbons. That's the things people hunt for in the bourbon club societies and all that other stuff. So what we did was, this board has explored other avenues, and one avenue we explored was purchasing of barrels, to where it's a custom barrel that's handpicked. And this particular barrel is kind of cool in a way because it's a certain particular board member's favorite distillery, his brand, so to speak. So what we did was I reached out to Diageo and ordered a particular barrel that's hand-selected, 9-year aged, sour mash, like he likes it. And what was cool about it is he didn't know about it. And truth be told, I was ordering some other barrels, and he was a little nervous about the barrel purchase because it is a lot of money out of pocket to begin with, but then you make it up on the end. And kind of kept it a little secret about the final barrel that I was picking out. And then so we brought that in, and it so happens it was the third barrel I purchased, and we got it first. So that was kind of nice to be able to have it in our store, and then put it right in front of the aisle where Jim normally likes to come and check out, and then go from there. But it's 9-year aged. It made about 144 bottles, and then we went and had Diageo put a little bit of jewelry, I call it, hanging from the neck, saying crafted for North Carolina or NC. And then we went ahead and I called it Jim White Select, and then the words "Thank you" stickered on each bottle. Well, as far as the limit, we'll carry it. So, anyway, a nice way to say thank you for all his work, and something lasting that we can show the town people of Indian Trail. It's a nice story that my staff knows and likes to tell.
Very good, thank you. It's anybody that wants to come by the ABC store can stop by and get a bottle. It's good stuff, isn't it, Jim? It is wonderful. It's special, and it's got Jim's name on it too. So anyway, come by and get it. I just want to say before I read this proclamation, we all up here know Jim. Jim sat out here in the audience for years because he was a concerned Indian Trail citizen. And, I try to describe him in a lot of different ways. He's a gentle person. He's a smart person. He's a thorough person. And I've had the honor to know you for about 8 to 9 years now. And you've done a lot for our town. You've done a lot in just being supportive to come here. And no matter what, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or whatever, you don't care. You're just a good guy. And I appreciate you, and I'm honored to call you friend. So I'm going to read this proclamation for Jim White. Whereas Jim White has a big heart for service to his country, his community, and his people. Whereas James White, an honored disabled veteran, served as a sergeant in the United States Air Force from 1965 to 1971, where he fought for his country in the infamous Vietnam War. Whereas Jim White has continued service to this town, the town of Indian Trail, over his lifetime, and is rumored to have attended nearly every Indian Trail Town Council meeting over the past years. Whereas James White was appointed to the ABC Board on January 9th, 2018, and was reappointed on April 14th, 2020, when his first term expired. Whereas James White is known to have exhibited the highest standard of good judgment, knowledge, ability, and moral character in his time as a public servant. Whereas Jim White is known as a positive person and is well liked by all who know him, council members, town staff, board members, and citizens. Whereas Jim White has a true concern for the well-being of the town of Indian Trail and always expresses his concern in the most positive light. And therefore, Michael L. Alvarez, Mayor of the town of Indian Trail, do recognize and celebrate the service of our colleague and respected friend, and as such proclaim Saturday, November 21st, 2020, as James A. White Day, and call upon all citizens of the town of Indian Trail to pause momentarily to honor him in his service to our community and country. Whereas witnessed by my hand and the official seal of the town of Indian Trail on the 18th day of November 2020. Jim. If I might ask everybody to come up, if you don't mind, to come up with Jim, and let's get our picture made.
Everybody ready?
Yeah, we're all smiling.
I'll take your word for it. Very good, thank you.
Can we get the family up here too? Does everybody get up? Jeff. That's it. Everybody. Come on, Jerry. We'll make it a big. Here. Get around your hand. Can you get us all in here, or do you want us to get all this?
I can get you all.
That's a good one.
All right, everybody ready? Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't take up much space.
Jim, just one thing, before you leave, I just want to say to you that we do really thank you for your service to the town. We thank you for your professionalism, and all that you do, and we do wish you the best. Thank you.
Okay. That brings us to recognition of staff military veterans. Mr. McLaurin, that'll be yours.
Yes, sir. One of the things that I'm very proud of with this town is the recognition of our veterans, those that have held up and sworn to protect the Constitution of the United States, because without their sacrifice, we wouldn't be the country that we are. And last week, we did a Veterans Day, a virtual Veterans Day ceremony, and if you just go out the front door, you see the Veterans Wall. We get our best ideas from our employees, and an employee came up to me and said, you know, we really need to recognize those town employees that have served in the military, and we've got 3 of them. One of them is here tonight, and I'll introduce him in just a minute. But what we want to do is recognize those folks and get his picture taken with the council, if the council's willing, and to also adopt a policy that when we have a town employee that also has served in the military, that we will engrave their name in the wall out here without any additional charge. I think that's the very least we can do. You see on your agenda, we have Tom Aspinwall, who is with Public Works, Adrian Moretz, and Adrian is back here in the back, and Andrew, I'm probably going to mess up your name, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time. Solosky, I think. So I'll ask those gentlemen to come up front. Tom is with Public Works, Adrian is over in engineering, and Andrew, I think, is with Park and Rec. He is a trumpet player, so if we have a ceremony, then we've got our music already lined up. So without further ado, I'll invite these gentlemen up, and if they want to make a few comments. I guess, let's see if they want to make a few comments first, and then we'll do the photo. So,
Yeah, I'll say something. Well, thanks for doing this for us. I appreciate that. Yeah, I was just saying thank you for having us up here and doing this. It's really I do appreciate that, and as a veteran, of course, you know, I was proud to serve, and you know, proud to always do my part. So I've been in this town for going on 4 years now, and I've enjoyed every minute here. It's been a lot, you know, I've learned a lot, and I'll continue to do so. I will say my name's spelled wrong on that agenda, so that's okay. Just when y'all do put it into the when y'all do chisel it in, make sure we'll get that right. But thanks again. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Adrian.
Yes, thank you again. Just to echo what Adrian was saying. Yeah, this is, I really appreciate this. Thank you very much. And it's been an absolute pleasure being here as well. I'm fairly new to working at the town hall, but I've been a resident here in Indian Trail for about 15, 16 years now. And still finishing my degree at UNC Charlotte as well with the help of the Army Reserves as well. But yeah, it has been really special to work here so far, and it has been really incredible. The staff as well have been super fantastic, always answering any questions that I have, and just been really fantastic as co-workers and as a family as well. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
if we could take a photo.
Give me 1 second. Okay, that brings us to public comments. We do have one public comment signed up, and it's virtual. If you give me just 1 second, turn up the volume. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Who's going to be speaking? All this time on hold, Abby is? Okay. Abby Brundett? you ha-
Abby and Jen.
All right, Abby and Joe, you have 3 minutes. After 3 minutes, I'm hanging the phone up on you.
Okay.
Just kidding. All right. Abby and Joe Brunette? Go ahead. I think they can hear you if you speak loud.
Hello. I am Joe from Joe's Jolly Elves.
And Abby from Abby's Angels. We are here to talk about the annual effort to bring Christmas to kids whose mothers are currently battling breast cancer. For these kids are overwhelmed with anxiety as their moms are fighting breast cancer. Mothers have chemotherapy often and do not have the energy, finances, or the immune system to do Christmas shopping and to make that makes Christmas uncertain. This year, the compounded factor of COVID-19 has led to even more strain to bring the joy of the family holiday to life.
Last year, Abby's Angels and Joe's Jolly Elves brought Christmas to over 30 children. This is our 5th year of doing this, and we would really appreciate your help this year as well.
We have coordinated with Cindy's Hope Chest to help get names of children who are most in need for the Christmas spirit this year. Each child has a wish list of what they want, need, wear, and read items to be met. If you wish to adopt a child, we ask that you give the child one item from each category. Packages should be wrapped and delivered to us by December 20th.
Currently, there are 17 children that are filling out their lists. If you wish to be a child's elf or an angel, please let us know. Provide your name, phone number, and email. We will assign children as soon as the lists are received.
We encourage everyone to be involved in bringing joy to the Christmas and the peace of the family tradition of gifts under the tree to children who need such stability, particularly this year with everything else in turmoil.
And I would like to reinstate my challenge of last year to the council members to add their names to the lists of elves and angels and take care of a child.
You can reach us by email at abbysangels@gmail.com or claire@brunjet.net or through Cindy's Hope Chest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Hold on the line. Okay, I will close public comments. And is there any council feedback to any of the public comments?
Like this. Mayor,
Mike.
could we get somebody to send out
yeah.
the email addresses?
Joe, Abby, did you hear that? They'd like you to email your email addresses to, you can email them to me or to the town clerk.
Sure thing.
Okay.
They can see me. Oh, Lord, sit down. It's not your spotlight. All right, good deal. All right, guys, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the town clerk's going to be on vacation to November 30th, so if you want to send it to Trina or yourself or me, and we'll send it out to the board.
Okay. And Claire, did you have the email addresses to hand out, or just leave with Trina?
No, I was just saying, if anybody wants to sign up now, they can just put it on the back of this.
You can leave that with Trina or Jim, or go to Jim. Okay. All right, that brings us to our law enforcement update.
I appreciate you amending the agenda, and because I didn't bring my two little guys with me, so you weren't going to get to see them. I passed out the reports. As you see, the total reports are 256, which is still a trending uptick. With all the construction and stuff and new people coming in, it's going to continue to grow. One of the things you'll notice has changed. The business checks have gone down tremendously, and that's because how we have started documenting those. If you'll notice too, the preventive patrols have gone up tremendously as well. The difference being, again, is how we started documenting them, getting out on foot, walking through the doors and stuff. We call that a business check instead of just riding through and checking on those. We kind of switched that up a little bit. Drug arrests have gone up a little, and again, that's all I have on that. I would like to say I had to take pictures of Mr. White and that barrel. A buddy of mine has been talking about that. He got a bottle of that last week and said it's delicious. I said, hey, this is the guy. He said, man, that's pretty bad. He said it's pretty cool, so I wanted to add that to it. So, is there any questions for us?
No, just thank you for filling in for Captain James.
Thank you.
Council, that brings us to the consent agenda minus the deleted item. If there's no questions, I'll need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Ms. McIntyre has made a motion to approve. By show of hands, all in favor? Let the record show that that was passed unanimously. There's no public hearings. We have old business, so we have a solid waste update. Mr. McLam.
Mr. McLam is not here. I'm not sure where he is, but I think I can give a report.
Okay, can you can give the report?
I will give the report.
Okay.
And if he comes in, we will so acknowledge, okay? Just to remind everybody that November 30th is the date of the route changeover. We're in the process of doing outreach in various forms. Hopefully, you've gotten some information on that. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mr. McLam.
I was like, man, we're getting through this. Oh, well, I better get upstairs. How are y'all doing this evening?
Good. Hope you are.
Solid waste, I am. Thank you. So we are all set to go for the 30th. If y'all have any questions, I'll answer those questions.
Why don't you talk about the bulk
Yep.
pickup?
We've been getting a lot of questions the last couple of days. Sorry, I'm out of breath from running up the stairs. Bulk has been very heavy this cycle. We didn't think it was going to be as heavy as it is. They didn't finish up until Saturday on the major pickups, and then we've run over into this week, which has caused other delays on recycling and on trash. So they're finishing those up as we speak. We have about 60 or so open items right now in our tracking system with them, which is abnormally high. We're working to get those down. It'll probably take through the first part of next week. But if anybody has any questions, public, us, y'all, anybody, just give us a call and we'll get it taken care of.
One thing. Adam, can you briefly talk to the board about, we talked about the garbage cans and the ability to get them and what we might bring to the board?
Yep. So we have had an issue pretty much for the life of the contract, but it's become more of an issue lately. With COVID and just with how manufacturing has gone, per our contract that we have with them, we are only allowed one supplier for trash cans. So that's in the contract, it specifies a certain can, color, and everything. What that does is it puts us at a disadvantage when we call that manufacturer, not us, but GB calls that manufacturer and says, hey, I need 500 carts made. 500 carts is a very small number compared to what, somebody else is ordering when they're ordering tens of hundreds of thousands of carts. So we continue to get pushed to the bottom of the list for carts to get made because our carts are embossed. They have the logo on the side of them. So it's not just you go pull a cart off the shelf. So one thing that we've looked at doing with them is to potentially find another manufacturer that can give us the same color cart, so a brown cart for trash, a blue cart for recycling, still emboss the logo on the side. But it'll give us two companies to be able to work with both companies to get, a product in a timely manner. I'll tell you right now, they ordered their last shipment in August. They literally just got it today. I mean, that's a huge window of time for how to get carts. So in that time, they ran out of some of our trash carts, so they started putting some of their own carts. So now they have to go back and swap those carts back out. So it's kind of to work through that process so we don't have that happen going forward. So they're going to work on getting some samples for us from a couple of different vendors. We'll decide on, one more that kind of fits the bill. And then we'll come back to y'all because it is part of the contract. It will have to be an amendment to the contract that y'all will have to agree to before we can make that change. And that's it'll be a simple, agreement, but both parties will have to agree to the change. So, any questions now that I've caught my breath about the other? Abby has posted a lot and has about 8 or 9 more posts between now and then, between different social media outlets and between the newspaper and different things. So we have done a lot to get the word out there. If somebody hasn't heard about it from us or from a neighbor, I think at this point they've probably tried not to hear about it. Signs are going up in front of the neighborhoods next week. So there will be a sign in front of most neighborhoods that says, your old service day was this, your new service day is this. Those are being put out by GB. So, thank y'all. Appreciate it.
I got my letter today.
Did you?
I think it was a letter today. Did they just go out?
Yes, between probably Saturday and early this week.
Yeah, I got a letter today.
So the postcards went out by GB. They got to most mailboxes last Monday and Tuesday. Our letters went out and got to mailboxes Tuesday through, I guess, today. Tuesday through Tuesday, they've kind of hit different mailboxes. So we sent out some internally today. We put some more out there for people that didn't get one, and we'll continue to do that through when the new cycle starts. So
Are you going to be here after the meeting?
Yes,
Because
sir.
I have another question.
I got it. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Some of you, Mr. Mayor, GB has missed picking up your garbage this week. I heard from one of the board members, and we've sent a truck out there. If for some reason your street is missed, don't hesitate to give me a call or give Adam a call, and we'll get right on it.
Thank you. That brings us to Turning Point Agency donation request. A few weeks ago, we received a request from Turning Point for additional funds for this year, and they came and made a presentation at the last meeting, and by our policy, that's pushed to this meeting for a decision on the council. Just like to remind council that we are gone through a pandemic this year. Their stores have been closed, their fundraisers have been shut down, so this very valuable service to our county has suffered this year, exceptionally, like others have too, but this is one agency that provides a value to every other agency within the county. And rather, it's up to the council if someone would like to make a decision on if yes, how much.
Can we discuss it a little bit? This is, we're deviating from the policy since they came to council last year and asked for a donation. And Turning Point is a great organization. I think our ABC board supports them as well with donations out of the profits from the store. But there are other agencies out there, other 501c charitable organizations doing good work. And we had someone in here at the last council meeting that I think dovetails the work that that Turning Point does, and that's the drug and DUI court. Is there any consideration or possibly donating to an organization that dovetails with Turning Point in lieu of, suspending our policy again? And it starts to make me wonder if we should even have a policy. If we're going to allow charitable organizations to come year after year and approve it, then let's do away with the policy also. That's something I just wanted to mention to the board.
Council? Anyone?
Then on that note, I would make a motion. I will make a motion to deny the agency donation request by Turning Point. That's my motion.
Mr. Morse has made the motion to deny the agency request by Turning Point. By show of hands? All in favor? All opposed?
I think we ought to give something. I mean, if we just give a little bit, I mean, what did we give them, Jerry, last year? Do you remember?
Haven't we given them in the last 2 years?
I think it was 2 the first and 1,000 the second. Correct me if I'm wrong at some
Something
point,
like that,
Jim?
yeah.
I'd be 4,000.
Anybody?
Well, before that,
Fine with that.
was there a discussion in between the motion, or was 3 hands raised?
There was 3 hands raised.
So
yes.
Mr. Morse's,
Who was
Motion.
the three that was
Was a
raised?
fail.
Sorry.
You,
Mr. McIntyre, Mr. Cohen, and Mr.
Yes.
Barber voted nay on the motion.
Yes, we
Yes.
did. I did, yes.
And
So-
Mr. Head, okay, go ahead.
So, Mr. Mayor, let me just ask this there. I understand questions about the policy, but this is unprecedented times.
Yes.
Nothing's normal. You know, I think we even have to change the phrase that we all use, which is hindsight being 20/20, because we can't use 20/20 anymore. But that being said, I understand wanting to follow the policy, but Turning Point came here and they asked for a donation. The DUI court is also important, but they did not ask for a donation. So to take a donation and give to them when somebody has asked for it who needs it, I think that's being a little bit callous, but that's just my personal opinion, not a fact. Mr. Barber has suggested $1,000. I would be okay to that based on the balance that we have remaining within the funds. So I don't know what the next steps are. There was a motion put forth, it did not pass.
I believe there would be a second motion to suspend the policy
Thank you.
and to request a donation. Am I correct,
Barbara,
Eric?
you can take that.
I can't make the motion. No. Mr. Barber, you want to make the motion?
Two
To
motions.
suspend, two motions. First, to suspend the policy for agency donation.
I make a motion to suspend the policy.
Mr. Bar,
And-
okay, wait, two motions. Mr. Barber's made a motion to suspend the agency donation request policy. All in favor? Opposed? Let the record show, all were in favor, Mr. Head and Mr. Morse opposing. Second motion? Second motion.
Second motion. I make a motion, we donate $1,000 to Turning Point.
Mr. Barber's made a motion to donate $1,000 to Turning Point. All in favor? All opposed? Let the record stand. All are in favor. Mr. Head and Mr. Morse opposing. Motion passes. Okay. That brings us to new business, Grand Marshal. Council, you should have received the recommendations of the Rotary Club today. Mr. Hayden's here to ask for a final decision or additional recommendations.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Always nice to be in front of you today. On a Wednesday, no less. Let's not make this a habit, shall we? So I did send out an email based on the Union West Rotary, put forward 2 nominations for potential Christmas Parade Grand Marshal. Just to briefly recap, one was Dr. Mike Harvey. He received Union County Public School Principal of the Year. He is the principal over at Sun Valley High School. The second is a husband and wife combination. Mr. and Mrs. Latta, again, both high school teachers, both again at Sun Valley. Mrs. Latta was the Sun Valley High School Teacher of the Year, and Mr. Latta was the recipient of the Hopland Award recently in October. And it's noted that the Lattas are both very active as teachers, but also in the Sun Valley High School general community. So typically following our policy, names are presented, and then one name is, or a pair of names is voted, and we will make further contact with them to invite them to the parade.
Also, the council's free to nominate someone else. Mr. Morse?
Just have a question, because I searched the internet for it, but what is the Hopland Award?
You searched the very same internet that I searched, and I was able to find a video of him receiving the award. My best guesstimation, and again, this could be 100% off, but based on some of the comments that were, on the Facebook video, I believe, and Mr. Latta receives a lot of recognition for steering high school students that may not be interested in attending college, but more towards different trade and different service fields, if you will. Again, that is my best guess, and it could be 100% spot on or a 100% miss.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's kind of awkward, both sets of nominees are from the same school.
Yes.
And council kind of feel kind of awkward to nominate one pair and not the other, and not recognize all 3 of them. Just saying, but Dr. Harvey is the principal and administrator, and Mr. and Mrs. Lotta are teachers, so they're on a different level there. So just a couple of thoughts in your head. Mr. Barber?
Ms. Lala works with the exceptional children?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm familiar with her. Okay, yeah, through the Lions Club stuff, yeah, okay. I'd be very honored that, I mean, we got two good choices, but Ms. Lala, I'd be really for.
I do not envy this job of yours. You know, it's choosing between your two favorite children, if you will. That's why I only have one. It's real easy to make that choice. But no, you know, again, you have the ability to choose as you will. Again, you know, Union West Rotary puts forward names, and they always struggle. It's, you know, trying to boil down 40,000 residents and organizations and businesses that all do a lot for the community.
So, Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
It's three good individuals in terms of their accomplishments. They all serve Sun Valley. Would the council be okay with basically recognizing all three in terms of the Grand Marshals, plural? Would the council be interested in that? Because the thing is, it's not like you're going to win Principal of the Year every year or Teacher of the Year every year. That would be, you would hope for that, but that probably doesn't happen. So it would be good to kind of recognize the accomplishments all in the same year at the same time by having three Grand Marshals for the parade. But that's up to the council. I'm just making that suggestion.
I'll add their exceptional nominees simply because of what teachers and administrators and schools have had to go through this pandemic just to keep children educated. That's up to you. You can make a motion as to such. Or
I wanted to
you
get
can ask for
feedback from the
input.
council
Mr.
before.
Morris, you show
You took the
confusion.
question right out. That's what I was going to suggest.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I think it's, you know.
Yeah,
Okay
good
with that?
idea.
Mr. Barber, you okay with that?
So I want to make a motion, and if council doesn't object, I'll make a motion that we have the Grand Marshal for the Town of Indian Trail Christmas Parade to be Dr. Mike Harvey and Mr. and Mrs. Lauder of all of Sun Valley High School.
And all of, you want to put them all on one float? The whole
Well,
school?
we can, if we don't have to, but we can.
No,
The logistics will work out.
No, I mean the whole school.
Hayden and the Parks Department very capable of working out the logistics.
Okay, there you go. All right. So, if I understand Mr. McIntyre correctly, he'd like to nominate Dr. Mike Harvey, Mr. and Mrs. Lotta, and basically and as representatives of Sun Valley High School and their personal achievements as our Grand Marshals. With a show of hands, all in favor? The record stand, that was unanimous.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, that brings us to the manager's update.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I'll be sensitive of the time because I know I'm the only thing between you and a birthday dinner, so. Under the manager's report, you have a memo before you. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but I'm just going to highlight the items there. And then one of those items is just for information only, as kind of things to come in the future. And the other one, I need to try to get some sort of consensus as to whether you would like us to spend some staff time on it or not. And I have some basic comments on other topics after that. Just want to remind the board that you have 3 bond issues outstanding. One is $2.5 million for roads, which is a good thing because we got a lot of road problems here. Roads we need to take over, roads we need to fix, et cetera, et cetera. But if we don't use it by November of 2021, it goes away. And if you remember, when you did that bond issue, it was a GO bond issue, which is a big thing, where you had to put it on the ballot and get the voters to say yes. And I think we could certainly use that money on roads. One of the things we're looking at is perhaps doing it on the Indian Trail Road project but we're continuing to work on that. And when we get to budget season this spring, we'll have some specific recommendations. 9,500,000 on Old Monroe Road. We've had some discussion on that. I'm not real sure where that's going, but I've got a smart attorney over here and a smart board that can kind of help us negotiate that out. And then the last one is $1.8 million on Parks and Recreation. Now, when you approved that bond issue a number of years ago, the devil's always in the details, and in the fine print, apparently it's limited to the two major parks that you have. So once the way we're going to look at that is once the Park and Rec plan is completed, which should be, I think, in the spring sometime, we'll look at what the recommendations are and see if that's money that we want to use to start to jumpstart some of those recommendations. So just, keep that in the back of your mind that this will be coming back to you for some recommendations in the spring. The other two items are more, I just want to get some consensus. We are already starting to work on next year's budget process. Jim and I had a meeting yesterday to kind of map out a master calendar, and then we're going to kind of vet it with the staff to get their feedback, and then we want to vet it with you. And in this year's budget, we want to make it a smooth process, but we also want to present you some options that you can consider. One of the things I've tried to do as your manager over the last 90 days is provide you more information so that you can make informed decisions. And what a lot of cities will do is they will have a facilitator come on board to conduct an annual retreat so that the board can set some tangible goals that they would like to achieve as a town. And then when we start to do the budget, we tie the budget back into those goals. I don't know that y'all have ever done that before, or at least not in recent memories. If that's something that you're interested in looking at, I can bring back some names at the December meeting of people that do this. And the board can decide whether how you want to proceed from there. You may not want to make a decision at the December meeting, but you may want to appoint a little subcommittee that could vet the 2 or 3 names that I bring. And we would envision that we kick that off in probably late January, early February. The last thing is this city is growing. I mean, you don't have to be here more than 10 minutes to figure that one out. And while this is a new path to you, other cities have gone down this path before you. And so I wanted to see if the board is interested in maybe starting to develop some dialogue with some other fast-growing cities where we sit down very informally and talk about what did y'all go through? How did y'all solve these problems? What are some things that we need to see down the road? And there's some other established cities that have been out there that we could perhaps want a dialogue to. So if I could just get some consensus on those 2 items, the facilitator and the dialogue, we can start to work on that and bring it back to you.
Council, just give him a show of hands for a consensus so he can, if you're okay with it. Mr. Cohn?
What are you asking if we're interested in doing it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I didn't.
Todd, just a show of hands, just to show him you're interested, or Jerry?
For the downtown,
I'm asking for 2 things. One, do you want me to look at bringing a facilitator in? And maybe if we can get a show of hands on that. I'll bring you some names. It hasn't cost you any money yet. If you contract with the facilitator, then, you would spend some money on that.
to facilitate what exactly?
To work with the council to develop some annual goals for the upcoming budget season, basically to lead your annual retreat.
Thank you.
Okay. So I guess if we could get a show of hands, if you'd like me to bring back some names for the board to look at, or if you don't, then, we can do our annual retreat.
Mr. McIntyre?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Cohn? Mr. Barber?
No? Okay.
No, and Mr. Morse?
I'm open either way.
Okay.
It's,
Yeah,
I think
give us an idea, what do you think of, what does something like that cost? Just
It's been a while since I've had facilitators. I could get a range for you.
exactly what does a facilitator do? Is he gonna,
They facilitate.
He or she?
or, yeah,
What a facilitator does is they will work with the board to kind of develop the strategic plan moving forward. They will moderate the discussion between the board to draw out what does the board see, where does the board see that it wants to be, say, within the next year, perhaps the next 5 years? And we articulate that into some tangible goals. It's also a process where you have staff interacting with that. Different facilitators do it differently. I've talked to the director of COG. She has done some work, I think, for Belmont and one of the other cities and we can try to get some samples of their work so that you could see what it looks like. I will say this, and compliments to this board. This board seems to operate very well as a board, which is really a plus. Sometimes if facilitators go into a town where the board does not operate real well, that requires some extra work. Does that answer your question?
not really, but that's okay. No, I do, which further makes a further question for me, because I'm just not familiar with what they do.
Mhm.
But what I'd like to know is what you think. Because I look at you as an experienced, good town manager. Do you think it would be I think we're gonna get an honest answer.
Mhm.
What do you think? Do you think it's helpful to do that? Obviously you do, or you wouldn't probably be bringing it up right now.
I think, and thank you for the compliment, and I will give you the best answer I know.
Mr. McLaurin?
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions on this. Would you mind making it like an agenda item with a couple of cost ranges and
Sure.
a full description?
Be glad to. Okay.
So that they have a better explanation and they make a better educated decision?
Be glad to.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'll
Now,
defer
if
that.
you would finish the question,
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt, David.
No, that's fine, and I appreciate you suggesting that, Mr. Mayor. I think you ought to try it, and see if that's something that you feel like that you want to do, maybe next year. Particularly if you get a good facilitator. A lot of times cities will use the same facilitator for several years running. So I'll send it to you, we'll frame it, and just see what y'all want to do with it. Fair enough?
Good deal.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's talk about the dialogue with the other cities. Is that something you would like to look at?
I would, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
Okay. No?
Yes.
And if I can only get consensus of, yeah, we want to look at this, then we can start to framework some specifics. Because I can tell you your city's going to change a lot in the next 10 years. And while we have grown a lot, we still operate a lot like a small town, and we can't do that 10 years down the road. It doesn't work any longer. So the last few things I'll mention, Mr. Mayor, is the comp plan. We asked for some names for stakeholders. We're not getting a lot of names, so if you know some folks that you think would be really good to work on the comp plan, please get it to myself and Brandy Deese. We're ready to start to roll that out.
And how many people again? 5 or 6? Is that what we're talking about? Or?
I think it was like 5 or 6, but get us the names and we can work through that. I've gotten a name from the mayor already today, and we'll follow up on that one. Okay. I want to thank, on a personal note, because the COVID virus is really running rampant, I want to thank everybody for wearing their mask. Hopefully you like the Town of Indian Trail mask. If you do want some extras, I think we can get you some extras. They do work very well. And the last thing I have, Mr. Mayor, before I sit down, is you got a council report a week or so ago. You'll have another council report coming out next week. Hopefully you find that document helpful. If there's some improvements you want to suggest to it, please don't hesitate. That's all I got, sir.
Thank you. Darren, council comments? There wasn't anything else. We're going to blame you for holding up.
Mr. Morris.
Can you speak a little louder because Todd can't?
Mr. Morris.
Thank you. don't really have a lot to talk about. I think this, if we're talking about, though, the downtown, seeing how other towns have developed their downtown and taking a field trip for that, have we considered maybe virtually meeting with some of these folks, like we're doing with COVID? And which towns it would be, I would be interested in which towns we would want to go and speak to, to see the do's and don'ts and their missteps. So that would be nice. Something I want to just mention is talking about losing with dignity, which happens to me quite a lot. As what happened earlier tonight, there was a vote, and I was on the losing side of the vote, which is no big deal, and it shouldn't be a big deal. It doesn't ever affect the relationship that I have with my peers. And I'm only just mentioning this as we had an election, and there's a lot of hurt feelings out there, and it was just a vote. It was a decision that people made. And I just hope that, us as a community, regardless of where you come down on decisions that are made, it's easy to be happy about when you're winning a point. But sometimes we just need to learn how to lose with a little more dignity. That was it. Happy birthday, and that's all my comments. Want to keep them short. Good night.
Mayor Alvarez.
I would like to ditto Mr. Morse's statements on losing with dignity and remind everyone, next week's Thanksgiving. This year especially, we have a lot to be thankful for and a lot to be concerned about. But especially me, I have a lot to be thankful for being able to still sit here today and to be very thankful for this town and for all that everyone has done for me, from good wishes to assistance with food during my amputation and my battle with cancer. I can never conjure up the words to show my gratefulness, only to be a good steward of your voice. And wish everyone a very happy, blessed, and healthy Thanksgiving, and pray that this time next year we'll be able to be together in larger groups for the holiday season and for Thanksgiving. So that's about it. Ms. McIntyre, happy birthday.
Thank you, sir.
There was a closed session on the agenda, but I fought very hard in your favor to get it off.
You're a good
I
man.
mean, it cost me an arm.
You're
so-
good. You're a good man. You're a good man. Small price to pay.
I'm done.
Mr. Cohn.
I told Marcus that I'd be quick because he's hungry and his wife's got a meal prepared for him, and he can get angry easily. So I'm going to make this quick. Everybody have a good Thanksgiving. And Jerry, I appreciate that. I like that, what you said. We don't really get into national politics, but, it's not, you learn to be a good winner and you learn to be a good loser. And I just hope that, everything works out and everything is better in in a month or 2 months. We're back to normal again. But Marcus, happy birthday.
Thank you, sir.
Birthday boy.
All right. Thank you very much. I am going to try to be brief, but I really want to highlight something. To all the public service employees, people that do things for us within the public sector, and by that I mean fire, law enforcement, medical, teachers, administrators. And I want to just mention something. My kids started going to Poplin Elementary School when it first opened. And on Friday night, unfortunately, Mrs. Melissa Bowman, who was the data manager over at Poplin, she lost her battle with COVID and related illness. And she's somebody that I met when I first got there. And I'll tell you, the one memory that I have of her always is a smile on her face, always smiling, such a pleasant person over at Poplin. And we see all of us up here wearing a mask right now. I want to encourage everybody, forget about politics and where you stand on, whatever divide. Wearing a mask is an important thing to help protect you and others and your loved ones from this. To lose somebody who was such a vibrant part of our community and the school was really, really sad for a lot of us. All three of my children knew her and knew her well, and we do have her family's memory, and her memory in all our minds, and we're going to say some prayers for her. But what a lovely lady, and we really want to thank her family for allowing her to spend that time with us since 2000, and I think 2009, if I'm not mistaken. With that being said, I want to also thank Mr. McLaurin, you and your staff. Was it Carrie who was responsible, Carrie, for the
Carrie and
masks?
Trina.
Trina
coordinated. Carrie.
And Carrie
worked
for the
it out,
mask?
and I think you ordered it.
Right. Trina, I want to say that is a really good find in that this is the first mask from since March that I've been able to use, and I can breathe easily. It doesn't, feel tight on my face. So really, really good find here. I do appreciate it, and I like the little Town of Indian Trail emblem on it. To all of you here tonight, Council, I appreciate the birthday wishes. Mr. Mayor, next time I'll ask that you check with me first, sir, before scheduling on my birthday. But I know that you had a heavy
It
price
was a
to
birthday
pay
present to you.
by losing your arm just to get me out of here early, so I appreciate that. But thank you, everybody, and have a very good evening.
Mr. Barber.
First off, I'd like to wish the Mayor Pro Tem happy birthday, and I hope his wife knows we're all coming over to eat. I do want to say, since it was Veterans Day, God bless to my son and all the veterans out there. Thank you. I also want to know with the Christmas season coming up, I'm hoping everybody remember, hopefully, to shop local, help out the people here. This week, I think it's the last week, if you need help, that Union County is taking applications at the Christmas Bureau. So if you need help, apply. I think this is the last week they take applications. Appreciate the Sheriff's Department on the No Shave November. Evidently, hair don't grow on steel. That's why you didn't participate. I don't know. I know Superman didn't have a beard, so, But anyway, I appreciate y'all doing that. It was a nice thing y'all did. The Lions Club still having turkey shoot, 1 o'clock Saturday, Thanksgiving Day, 9 a.m. to noon. So that really does, most of that money does stay here local. We help people get glasses, things like that. So eye exams, those type of things. I do want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. I am thankful for the town staff and everything we do here, and I am thankful for Indian Trail. I think we have a great town, and I appreciate it. And I'm very thankful myself and to God and family and everybody. Thank you.
And Mr. Head.
I'll just say ditto to what everybody else has said. I will point out, again, Jim White's service to this town, this community, and I like the idea of recognizing our staff military veterans. Really appreciate that. Bye, have a good night.
Okay, before we adjourn, Mr. McLaurin, would you please lower the flag to half-mast for Ms. Bowman for the remainder of the week?
Okay,
Since she,
I think the flag's out.
it's already
there.
been done? Okay,
Already
just in
done.
case. Okay. We need Mr. McIntyre's made a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, please adjourn.
All in favor?
Jerry, come on,
Close
Jerry.
it.
Come on.